Ever feel like the world's moving so fast you might miss something?
You know, like it's accelerating away.
Yeah, and we're stuck trying to catch up. Well, today, we're tackling that head on.
Buckle up.
We're going deep into the world of AI.
And not just the tech itself.
Right, with Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI.
Now, you've given us a ton of material.
Interviews, talks, the works.
Our mission.
To find those golden nuggets of wisdom.
The stuff that you can actually use.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This isn't some fairy tale about tech wizards.
Yeah.
This is about how someone at the forefront of a field, someone like Altman, navigates massive change, figures out how to make a real impact.
And what we can all learn from that.
Precisely.
Because what's fascinating about Altman isn't just the prodigy label.
Right. Everyone loves a prodigy story.
It's more than that. It's the drive,
It's the hustle.
the refusal to wait for someone to give him permission that's really inspiring.
Okay, so give me an example. Where do we see this in Altman's story?
Take, for instance, him at 19 realizing, hey, I can just do things.
I love that. That's such a young age to have that realization, because it's so easy to get stuck in that mindset of like,
I need this degree. Or
yeah, I need permission or I need more experience.
I need money.
Yes, but Altman just dives right in.
And speaking of diving in, he then goes and secures a carrier deal as a teenager for his company, Looped.
See, that's what I'm talking about. How many of us would even try that? Just walk into those meetings.
It's that relentless resourcefulness he talks about.
Which is way more valuable than just, being naturally gifted.
Oh, absolutely. He walked the floors of cell phone conventions, found anyone who'd listen. That kind of persistence, that's a masterclass in itself.
It's like that saying, the master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried.
Exactly. And I'm curious, thinking about our listeners, what's a challenge you're facing?
Right now.
Yeah, right now. Where that kind of keep knocking approach could be the key.
It's like, what door are you willing to keep banging on until it opens? Or even just until you find a way in.
Because it might not be the door you expect.
Right. But then there's a bit of a turn.
Yeah.
Stanford happens.
Which, let's be real, not exactly a slouch in the world of, well, anything.
No, Stanford is top tier. But what stood out to me, even back then, AI wasn't the thing. Like it is now. It was almost niche.
It really was. AI research back then was like, that band everyone knew was good, had potential.
But they were playing, like, tiny venues.
Exactly. Limited by the tech.
Not enough computing power.
Not enough data. Those were real constraints.
So even Altman, drawn to AI as he was...
It wasn't a straight shot to OpenAI.
No, he hits pause.
Timing is everything.
It's like he knew it wasn't quite ready yet.
And that makes the whole OpenAI story even more interesting.
Because it's not like they had it all figured out on day one, right?
Mm.
It wasn't some grand master plan.
Oh, absolutely not. It was more like, hey, this whole AI thing, this could be huge.
Well, no.
Now what?
Exactly.
Which, honestly, is really refreshing to hear. Even groundbreaking innovations.
You don't have to start with all the answers.
They start with the right questions.
And the willingness to experiment.
Like their early projects, video games, robot hands. They were figuring it out as they went.
Which, I don't know why, but that's actually really reassuring to me.
Why?
Because even OpenAI, with all its resources...
Top minds, tons of funding.
They still started with a version of, let's figure this out as we go.
That's the beauty of it. But then something clicked.
The scale epiphany, right?
And this is where things get really interesting for all of us.
Because it wasn't just about AI working. What was it about how it was improving that captivated Altman?
Okay, so remember 2012. That's a pivotal year in this story.
All right, walk me through this.
Yeah.
What did Altman see that most people missed?
It all boils down to scaling laws in AI.
Scaling law.
And this is crucial for understanding where AI is going. Think of it like this.
Okay.
Imagine a child learning to talk. The more words they hear, the more they practice speaking.
The better they get at communicating.
Exactly. It's not just about adding more words. It's about the system itself getting better at using them.
So it's like a growth chart, but for AI. You can predict how well it will perform based on how much data it's fed and how large the model becomes.
You've got it. And that's what Altman recognized. AI's growth, it wasn't a steady walk anymore.
It was about to become a sprint.
And those early experiments, things like unsupervised learning, GPT-1.
Which at the time probably didn't seem that groundbreaking.
Do most? No. But they were the first whispers of a revolution.
Okay, hold on. Before we get too far ahead, let's unpack unsupervised learning and GPT-1 a bit. I want to make sure I'm following along.
Of course. Think of unsupervised learning like giving a kid a giant Lego set, but no instructions.
Okay.
They just start messing around, right? Figuring out what goes where.
Yeah, just experimenting.
And they end up building something incredible totally on their own.
I like that.
That's kind of what these early AI models were doing, but with language.
Okay, so instead of bricks, it's words and sentences.
Exactly. Learning without someone explicitly saying, this is a cat, this is a dog.
They're figuring out the patterns on their own.
The relationships in the data.
And GPT-1 was an early version of this.
Exactly. Generative pre-trained Transformer 1, but nobody has time for all that.
Right. GPT-1 it is.
It showed everyone what this unsupervised learning could do.
And was it, like, mind-blowing right away?
It wasn't perfect, not even close, really.
Okay.
But it was a glimpse
of what was possible.
A future where AI could generate human-quality text all on its own.
And that brings us to something really important, doesn't it? Because we're not just geeking out over technical stuff here.
Oh, this is way bigger.
We're talking about the implications, the dilemmas that come with this kind of power.
The stuff that keeps people like Altman up at night.
Right. Because it's one thing to build a super fast car.
It's another to make sure it doesn't, run off the road.
Exactly. And the stuff you dug up really highlights that tension.
It's there in everything he says.
Yeah, like that example about AI giving legal advice.
Oh, interesting one.
On the surface, it's like, whoa, AI shouldn't be practicing law without a license. But then...
There's always a but then?
There's so many people who can't afford a lawyer.
Millions.
AI, even if it's not perfect yet, it could be a bridge for those folks.
Access to justice, that's huge.
Right.
It's like technology forcing us to confront these really uncomfortable questions. Control versus access. Benefit versus risk.
And there's not always an easy answer.
Which I'm guessing is why it keeps Altman up at night.
Yeah, because he doesn't pretend to have all the answers either.
Which is honestly kind of refreshing.
He does talk about those defaults, though.
Setting those boundaries.
But not in a vacuum.
This has to be a conversation.
He's really big on the whole society needs to be involved thing.
Not just after the fact, right? We can't just hand over the keys to the tech companies and be like, hope it works out.
Or to governments, for that matter.
Right. Exactly. This is about our collective future. What kind of world do we want to live in with this technology? And Altman's views on AGI, artificial general intelligence. Well, they offer a window into what that could look like.
Okay, so let's talk AGI. This is where it gets really sci-fi, right? Robots taking over the world.
Not quite. What's fascinating about Altman's take, it's less about AI replacing us and more about amplifying what we can do.
So less Terminator, more like...
More like, imagine tapping into the combined knowledge and creativity of every person on the planet.
Whoa. Okay, so not just one super smart AI.
It's about accessing this collective intelligence, something bigger than all of us put together.
And Altman sees this as a good thing.
He does. He talks about ubiquitous computing tech woven into our lives in a way we can barely even imagine it now, and how that could actually level the playing field.
Education, healthcare, access to information.
All the things that are right now dependent on where you're born, how much money you have.
It's like taking the internet with all its potential and problems and then hitting fast forward.
And then multiplying it by, well, we don't even know the scale of it yet.
So here's the question. Are we already seeing glimpses of this? This vision of shared intelligence that Altman talks about? Is it already happening?
It's a question worth pondering.
It's almost like this undercurrent, You can sense it, but you can't quite...
Put your finger on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's definitely there. This feeling that things are shifting.
And it's not just the tech itself. Right.
It's deeper than that. It's like this realization that we're not just along for the ride anymore.
We have agency.
Yes. And that's what I appreciate about Altman's perspective. He's not just trying to blow our minds with how cool AI is. He's giving us a framework.
A set of principles for this new world.
Yeah. And he's saying, hey, this is on all of us to figure out.
It's not enough to be impressed by it.
Or even to just understand it, really.
It's about action. It's about shaping how this technology is used.
Which, yeah, starts with understanding it.
Absolutely. And that's where his advice becomes so practical, even for folks who aren't, coding geniuses.
Right, because not everyone's going to be building the next GPT.
He talks about adaptability.
Being willing to learn new things, pivot when you need to.
To embrace the unknown. That's a big one.
It's like what we were talking about before, that relentless resourcefulness.
Yeah.
That's not going away.
If anything, it's even more essential now, with AI changing the game.
So it's less about, everyone needs to learn to code.
Though, hey, it couldn't hurt.
And more about a mindset shift.
Curiosity, openness to new possibilities, asking what if instead of why bother.
You know, it's funny when you put it that way, it's almost like AI is pushing us to be more, well, more human,
How so?
more adaptable, more creative, more willing to question our own assumptions about what's possible.
It's like it's reflecting our own potential back at us.
Exactly. Because ultimately, this isn't about AI taking over. It's about AI helping us unlock our own capabilities. And that,
Yeah.
well, that's both incredibly exciting.
And yeah, maybe a little bit intimidating too.
Because it means we have a say. The future is unwritten. So, to our listener out there, the question is, what will you do? What will you create? What possibilities are you ready to explore?
It's a big, open-ended question, but in a world being reshaped by AI, it's the most important one to ask.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder those very questions. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.